I woke up and my car was gone. Keys missing, garage door wide open, and Sarah nowhere, no note, no message, nothing. At first, I thought someone had stolen it, but the security footage told a different story. There she was at midnight walking straight to the car, calm as ever, like it was just another Tuesday. No hesitation, no rush. She knew exactly what she was doing, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't random. This was personal. I didn't realize it then, but this was her response, not to a fight, not to some argument, but to me laughing at her. Mocking her the day she graduated, dismissing her success like it meant nothing. I thought I had the upper hand. I thought I was in control. But that night, that was the moment everything changed. The moment I realized she had been planning this for a long time. Before everything changed, I thought I had life figured out. I had a steady job, decent pay, a routine I could count on. And Sarah? Well, she was always the quiet one. Smart, sure, but more of a dreamer. She talked about going back to school, finishing her degree online. I supported her, kind of. I said I supported her, but deep down, I didn't really think it would lead too much. It just felt like a hobby to me, something to keep her busy. She studied at odd hours, sometimes late into the night. I'd walk past the room and see her taking notes, watching lectures. Honestly, I didn't get it. Why work so hard? For a piece of paper? I never said it out loud. Well, not at first. The day she graduated, she was glowing, dressed up, cap and gown, phone in hand, taking selfies, calling her mom. She even asked me to take a few photos of her holding her diploma. I did it, but I laughed. Not with her, at her. I made some joke about how people graduate every day, said, "Congrats on finishing the internet." Her smile faded, just a little, but she didn't argue. She just nodded, said thanks, and went back to celebrating. Looking back now, I realized that was the first shift. She stopped sharing things with me, stopped asking me for advice, stopped needing my approval. But I was too wrapped up in my own ego to notice. To me, her success didn't register. Because it didn't look like mine. I thought I was the strong one. The provider, the foundation. But I was too blind to see she was building something far more powerful, and she was doing it in silence. At first, it was subtle, little changes that didn't seem like much. Sarah started ordering better skincare, nicer clothes, not flashy, just elevated. She swapped her old laptop for a new one, had it delivered to a pickup point instead of home. When I asked, she just said she got a deal online. Then came the packages. Books, ring lights, WHITEBOARDS. She started working from the second bedroom, turned it into some kind of office. I peeked in once. She had a vision board, post-its on the wall, a full setup. I joked, "Starting your own empire." She smiled. Something like that. I didn't think much of it. I assumed she was freelancing or doing surveys or selling stuff online. Nothing serious. She didn't brag, didn't rub it in my face. She just worked. But things started shifting. We'd go out, and she'd pay the bill without flinching. She bought me a watch I'd once said was too expensive. Said, "I figured you deserved something nice." Then I noticed she was getting calls from unknown numbers, business numbers, meetings on Zoom where she wore blazers and had notes in front of her. Once, I overheard her say the words launch, client acquisition, and conversion funnel. I had no clue what any of that meant. I still thought it was cute, thought she was playing CEO. I told myself she'd burn out eventually and come back to reality, back to my world. But the more she grew, the smaller I started to feel. And instead of asking questions, instead of being curious, I started getting annoyed, resentful even, because I didn't want to admit it, but Sarah was entering a world I no longer understood, and she was doing it without me. It started with the way she locked her phone. Not just a password, Face ID, fingerprint, the whole thing. She used to leave it lying around unlocked, no big deal. Now, if I even looked in its direction, she'd tilt the screen away. Subtle, but noticeable. Then came the computer. Her old laptop was always open, even half dead from too many tabs. But the new one, always closed, password protected, always cleaned up. If I walked into the room, she'd quickly minimize windows or switch tabs. Once, I saw her slam the lid shut when I entered. She smiled like it was nothing, but I felt it. That shift. She started using terms I didn't recognize, stuff like affiliate metrics, funnels, conversion rates, and brand outreach. I didn't want to admit I was confused. So I made jokes. "You trying to be a tech CEO now?" She'd laugh, but it never reached her eyes. We stopped having dinner at the same time. She started eating in the office or saying she had calls. Her schedule flipped. I'd go to bed, and she'd still be up typing, clicking, muttering under her breath. I once woke up at 3 a.m. and saw light under the door. I cracked it open. She was mid-call with someone overseas, pitching something. She didn't even notice me standing there. One day, I got curious. I tried to check her browser history. Cleared. Tried to log into her laptop. Wrong password. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just working, she was building. And I had no idea what it was. I remember one specific afternoon. She came home with a luxury handbag. Not flashy, but I knew the brand and I knew the price. I asked where she got the money. She said, "From work." I asked, "What work?" She just smiled and walked away. It wasn't that she was hiding a secret affair. It was worse than that. She was hiding success, hiding the fact that she was becoming more independent, more confident, more powerful. And I hated that I didn't know how to process it. I wasn't afraid she was cheating. I was afraid she no longer needed me. And that's when I started doing the worst thing a man can do. Instead of supporting her, I tried to shrink her, tried to joke about her ambitions, roll my eyes when she mentioned work, call her boss lady with sarcasm in my tone, anything to make her feel small again. But she never argued. She never fought back. She just kept working, kept growing. And the silence, that's what scared me the most. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I waited until she went to bed late. Like always, I pretended to sleep, listening as she brushed her teeth, turned off the lights, and climbed into bed beside me. Her breathing slowed. Mine didn't. I slipped out quietly, tiptoed to her office, and powered on her laptop. To my surprise, no password prompt. Just a simple fingerprint scan, one I didn't have. That should have been the end of it, but I couldn't let it go. The next morning, when she left for a coffee run, I stayed behind, said I wasn't feeling well. 5 minutes after she walked out the door, I was back in that room. This time, I opened her drawers. Found folders, notebooks, planners, everything carefully labeled. Client list, launch calendar, Q2 revenue goals. There were numbers, lots of them. Big ones. She had already made more in that quarter than I did in a year. I flipped through invoices. She was consulting, building brands, mentoring startups. She had spreadsheets tracking profit, social media growth, even international leads. I just stood there, stunned. This wasn't a hobby. This wasn't a side hustle. This was an empire in motion, and I hadn't seen any of it. I wanted to feel proud, really I did, but all I could feel was shame. How had I missed this? How had I become so dismissive, so arrogant? And instead of owning that feeling, I did something worse. That night, her family came over for a small dinner. Her mom congratulated her again on finishing her degree, asked what her next step was. Sarah smiled modestly, said, "I've got a few projects in motion." Everyone clapped. I raised my glass and said, "Let's all toast to Sarah's internet degree and her top secret empire." It was meant to be funny. It wasn't. The room fell awkwardly quiet. Sarah gave a tight smile. Her mom frowned. Even the dog looked disappointed. Later, she didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just cleaned the dishes in silence, wiped down the counters, and went straight to bed. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. Didn't leave a note. Didn't say a word. I should have seen that as a warning, but I didn't, because I was too busy being offended, too busy protecting an ego I hadn't earned. I didn't realize it then, but that joke I made at the table, that wasn't just a bad moment. That was the final straw. And Sarah, she had already started planning her next move. The night everything unraveled didn't begin with a fight. It began with silence. Sarah barely spoke to me that evening. She made dinner, quietly set the table, and didn't even ask if I wanted a plate. She sat across from me, scrolling through her phone, eyes blank, expression unreadable. I asked if something was wrong. She said, "No, nothing's wrong anymore." And that sentence chilled me more than if she'd yelled. It felt like a door quietly closing. Later that night, I heard her moving around the house, not pacing, not storming, just moving with purpose. Drawers opened, cabinets shut. The soft clinking of keys. I looked at the clock. It was nearly midnight. I walked into the hallway just in time to see her slipping on a coat. She didn't flinch when I called her name, didn't stop. She turned slowly and said, "I need some air." "Where are you going?" I asked. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I'm taking back what's mine." And then she walked out the door. 5 minutes later, I realized the car was gone. So were the spare keys. I panicked, not because I thought she was in danger, but because I knew deep down this wasn't impulsive. This was planned. I ran to the garage, checked everything. Empty. Everything perfectly clean. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from her. Just one line. "Your ego's been driving long enough. Time for a walk." I stared at the screen, jaw tight, heart pounding. She wasn't just angry. She was reclaiming something. Respect. Control. Dignity. The next morning, she returned. Calm. Collected. I was ready to fight, to defend myself, to argue. But she didn't give me that chance. She stood in the kitchen, coffee in hand, and said, "You laughed at my graduation, mocked my work, ignored my growth." She looked me in the eyes and continued, "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to remind you that silence doesn't mean weakness, and humility isn't permission to be belittled." Then she walked past me like I was a stranger. That moment, that wasn't a confrontation. That was a shift in power. And for the first time in our marriage, I realized I was no longer the one holding the keys. The truth didn't come out in a dramatic blow-up. There was no screaming match, no slammed doors, no threats, just clarity. Cold, calm, and undeniable. It happened 3 days later. I came home from work to find Sarah sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, papers neatly stacked beside her, a cup of tea in hand. She looked up, not with anger but with the kind of peace that comes after making a final decision. She gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit down. We need to talk." I sat, unsure what was coming. I braced myself for a breakup, for a speech about growing apart. Instead, she turned the laptop toward me. It was a dashboard, financial numbers, client lists, earnings. Her business. Her very successful business. She scrolled through it like a quiet storm. Showed me invoices, contracts, testimonials, clients in 5 countries, a 6-figure income, projected growth that tripled mine. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the screen like it was in another language. I didn't hide this because I was ashamed. She said, "I hid it because I knew you'd mock it before you understood it." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because she was right. I hadn't supported her. I hadn't believed in her. Then she pulled out another document, property paperwork. She placed it in front of me. I scanned the address. It was my parents' old house, the one they'd lost in a foreclosure a year ago. "You always talked about how sad it was to lose the family home," she said. "So I bought it, quietly, in cash." I felt my throat tighten. She kept going. "I didn't do it to impress you. I did it because I could. Because I worked for it. Because every time you laughed at me, I learned to move in silence." And then she said something I'll never forget. "You didn't just mock my graduation. You mocked my growth. But while you were laughing, I was building. And now, I don't need your permission to be proud of myself." There was no malice in her voice. No smugness. Just truth. Raw. Undeniable. Deserved. I sat there, hollowed out by the weight of my own arrogance. She had done everything I didn't believe she could, and she never asked me for a single thing, except respect. And I couldn't even give her that until it was too late. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, while Sarah slept beside me, like someone who had finally laid a heavy burden down. I kept replaying everything in my head, every smirk, every sarcastic comment, every moment I dismissed her without realizing it. The truth was, I hadn't just underestimated her. I had belittled her. And not because I didn't think she was capable, but because deep down, I was afraid she actually was. For so long, I tied my worth to being the provider, the one in control, the one who knew how the world worked. And when she started rising quietly, on her own terms, it shook something in me I wasn't ready to face. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table long before she woke up. No laptop, no phone, just silence. When she came in, I looked at her differently, not like someone I needed to fix, but someone I needed to learn from. "I'm sorry," I said. "I see it now. I see you." She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me, tired, cautious, waiting to see if it was real this time. And I get it. Because respect, once broken, isn't rebuilt in a single sentence. That was the life-changing moment. Not when I saw her earnings or the house she bought, but when I realized I could either keep defending my ego or finally become the man she believed in long before I believed in myself. Sometimes, power doesn't come from raising your voice. It comes from rising in silence. And Sarah, she didn't just take back her worth. She showed me how small mine had become. And from that moment on, everything changed. Because I knew if I wanted to stay in her story, I had to rewrite my role. Looking back now, I understand what I didn't back then. Success doesn't always look loud. It doesn't have to wear a suit or come with a title. Sometimes, it wears sweatpants, stays up late behind a laptop, and quietly builds something powerful in the shadows. I spent so long thinking I was the center of the story, that I was the one keeping everything afloat. But I wasn't the foundation. I was just the loudest noise in the room. Sarah was the one doing the real work, the hard work, the invisible work, the kind of work that doesn't ask for applause, it just delivers. And while I was busy trying to stay in control, she was rising, not to beat me, not to shame me, but to reclaim a version of herself I had stopped seeing. This experience changed me, because it forced me to face who I had become and who I needed to be. To every man who thinks belittling someone makes you bigger, it doesn't. To every partner who laughs off the dreams of the person they love, don't. Because while you're laughing, they might just be building something that leaves you behind. Sarah didn't need revenge. She didn't need to yell. She just needed one quiet midnight, one set of keys, and the courage to stop waiting for my permission. She didn't leave to hurt me. She rose to heal herself, and in doing so, she showed me what real power looks like.